Okay, let's go to part 3 here. Okay, finding the border. What is this all about? This is we're still talking about coming up with the right product, the right service, and how do we have success. And this is these guys called the Alessi brothers, and they ran a design house making ceramics, plates, and those sort of dishware, that kind of thing. And their quote was this here: dance on the borderline between success and disaster because that's where your next big breakthrough will come from. And their thought was that to have really great success, you're right on the edge. It could go either way: great success or great failure. And these guys were really known for coming up with really outrageous designs that were successful. And the interview was about how could they come up with such great designs that were so far out that people wouldn't have thought out, but they ultimately are still successful. How did they actually do that? Although this gray or borderline area is where blockbuster products come from, each product developed for that area is potentially high-risk project because the analysis that leads the company to the decision is subjective and also based on gut feel. So the company has to be willing to accept risk as part of the process. Okay, you're going to have failure and you're going to have success. You got to be willing to accept the risk of failure because you're going to fail more oftentimes than you are successful. But let me go back. What they did was they basically threw stuff up on the wall. They made outrageous designs, and they monitored the customers. And the designs that the customers actually liked, they produced more of. And the ones that they didn't like, that didn't sell, they stopped producing immediately. So it wasn't so much that they planned ahead of time that this outrageous design was going to be the one we're going to work with, is that they just threw out anything, and the ones that worked they ran with. This is a really important line. We can do all of the market research we want, and I'm going to encourage you to do market research, but we really don't know what the customer is going to buy until when? After they already buy it. So we don't really know ahead of time. So if we can get it out there and get it in their hands, that's the best information that we can get out there. So they threw anything on the wall. The things that stuck, they ran with. The things that didn't, they pulled. And people don't remember those things. They only remember the things that stuck, the things that had success. Focus groups suck. Focus groups suck. Now, how many of you out there know what a focus group is? Okay, a focus group, usually a company, smart companies, put together a group of customers or prospective customers in a room, and they have a facilitator, and usually this whole process is being watched and sometimes recorded, and they go through asking the customers, what sort of products and services they would like to see. There are other types of focus groups, but that's the one we're focused on. What sorts of products and services they want to see. Now, smart companies use focus groups. So first of all, most companies are not smart. So most companies don't at all really try to find out what the customers want. They try to sell something, and if the customer wants it, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. But smart companies use focus groups. But what I'm saying is that it's not that focus groups suck per se, is that most people use focus groups incorrectly. This is why. Because if someone asks you what sort of product and service you want, and you're able to tell him, that generally means that that product or service already exists somewhere. If you're able to be explicit, remember that explicit, implicit? If you're able to actually explain the type of product and service that you need, the needs that you have, it's likely that someone else has already jumped on those things. Because people have difficulty doing what? Explaining latent needs and wants and ones that are implicit. So ultimately, what we have to try to do is we have to try to figure out, how do we get to those latent needs and wants? How do we get to the implicit? How do we do that? Now, this is the opportunity frontier that we talked about a little bit before. And here we are. So this is the frontier, the line here. And so when focus groups ask questions, and you can be explicit about your answers, they're right here. So let's say that you run a focus group, and you take you've asked your questions, and they tell you what you want. By the time you develop that product and service, 5 months, 6 months, a year later, okay, competition is going to be great. People aren't going to want that product or service anymore. What we have to try to figure out how to do is we have to try to figure out how do we produce a product or service that is closer to implicit here, so by the time the customer is there 5 or 6 months, a year later, and can articulate what it is that he or she wants, will be there. And if we can create products and services near this implicit line, this opportunity frontier, we may be able to have this opportunity all to ourselves, because we're going to be far ahead of the competition. Okay. Now let's look at a quick example. Steve Jobs argued that they didn't do market research. And the reason is just this. Because if they did market research, no one would have told them to make the iPhone. Because people didn't know what the iPhone was. They didn't know what was possible. They couldn't explain it. Okay? So, but as soon as the iPhone came out, it was a big hit because people realized that's what it was. There was a latent need and an implicit need for simplicity and all of these sorts of things that the iPhone embodied. So as soon as the iPhone came out, everyone said, exactly, that's exactly what I want. And then, of course, because of the phone coming out, people then got the words to be explicit about those needs and desires. And then, of course, everyone else moved to swiping and these sorts of techniques, but Apple has the lead. The same sort of thing I'm talking about. If you're able to draw out the implicit needs and latent needs and create products and services around them, you will be out ahead. You'll be out ahead. Okay. Listening post. When we go to a zoo and we want to observe animals, is that the best place to go? If we want to observe animals in the real setting? Of course not. Of course not. So the same thing is, how do we go about observing customers? If we put customers in a focus group, that's an artificial setting. They're not going to act as if they were going to act if they were actually in a store. It's an artificial setting. So what we want to try to do is try to catch customers in a more natural setting. A listening post. Okay? A listening post is a place where we can observe customers in their buying behavior and learn from that particular activity. Pier 5 was a hotel, and what they did is that they gave cameras to their hotel customers. And then at the end of the day, they took those cameras, and the next morning they developed the pictures. I'm sure you've been in hotels where they did similar things. But what these guys realized is that people took pictures of things they really liked, and they took pictures of things they really didn't like. So what Pier 5 used to do is they'd go through the photos and analyze the photos, and based upon that information, they would make changes to their service. Eavesdropping on the market. We're going to come back to this again. Eavesdropping on the market. But eavesdropping means, again, listening in on a situation that you're not necessarily supposed to be hearing. You're overhearing something. And what we have to try to do is train ourselves to be in a position where we do the similar sort of thing. How do we do that in terms of the market? Anthropologists and moles. Anthropologists are among the lowest paid academics out there. What their skill is, of course, is observation, behavioral analysis, that sort of thing, whether it's animals or people. What I can tell you now is that some anthropologists are making a ton of money these days because what they're doing is they're selling their services to companies, and they're selling their expertise in behavioral analysis. Okay, and but what they're analyzing, the object of their analysis, of course, are buyers and customers, and they're helping companies understand the buying process better and the customer better. What is a mole? A mole is, we're not talking about the animal, we're talking about a spy. A spy that is deeply embedded in the texture of the environment. Well, we can do the same thing as business people. We can plant, quote unquote, people in the customer's environment and learn from that information. Learn from that information. You know, if we're making bikes, we can have our employees join bike clubs and be a member of the bike club and really become a trusted member and learn from observing and living as a bicyclist to find out what the problem is. What's going on among bicyclists? Excuse me. Buying mode. Yeah. Remember, there's a difference between people who are searching and people are buying. And we need to try to understand what they do when they buy. And it's not very clear if people even understand why they buy things. Why do you buy this toothpaste? And you can come up with lots of different reasons why you might buy this toothpaste, but the real reason might be is that your mother bought this toothpaste because her mother bought this toothpaste, and because you grew up with this toothpaste, this is the toothpaste you buy. It might be as simple or as complicated as that. Are you reading your customer's mind? If you're not reading your customer's mind, okay, your competitors are. Nordstrom's is a high-end department store, something like an H&M, but it was a little higher end. I can't vouch for it right now. And about 12 years ago, when they started putting out a small catalog on the web, the woman there was very, very smart, and she wanted to understand what the customer was actually thinking. So she did tracking analysis and also had an internal search engine. So when you did searches on the site, she would track the keywords that you used to search, and then also she'd track your path through the site. What pages you went through, your click analysis, and that sort of thing. This is stuff which sophisticated companies are doing today. She was doing 12 years ago, and using that information, because that's really behavior. People aren't saying, oh yes, we're interested in shoes. We can tell if they're interested in shoes if they go there, if they spend time there, and what color shoes, and how much time did they spend. Reading the customer's mind. Once Famous is a store/lab in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it was a store for people who were merchandising retail. So you'd go in, and there'd be a sign saying that that you might be observed, and this was a lab. But you go in just like a regular retail store to buy something. But what was happening there is that you were being observed while you were buying, and companies would spend lots of money putting their product and service in, product there, and seeing how different types of merchandising would affect customer behavior. Would they be more likely to buy it if they had the vase turned this way, or facing the light, or on this sort of shelf, or laying down, that sort of thing. So again, based upon what customers actually did, rather than trying to ask them, they would take this information and incorporate this information in the development of the product and service, or in the merchandising of the product and service in other stores. So the question is, how can we read the minds of our customers so that we can develop products and services that they actually want and need? Eavesdropping on the market. Eavesdropping on the market. Mentioned before what that means. This is the need, problem, pain concept. This one concept will increase the number of potential business opportunities that you come up with many, many times fold. This one little technique here. Okay. Unmet market need. That's what a business opportunity is, an unmet market need. Okay. But it's oftentimes very difficult for people to think in terms of needs. What do women 18 to 35 need? It'd be hard to try to think about that. But if you just change it, rephrase the question in what problems are women 18 to 55 have, then you start looking at problems. People are hard coded to think in terms of problems. The newspaper's about problems. At dinner, we think about problems. We watch TV. It's all about problems. I think it's related to this fight or flight. If there's a problem, we need to be able to understand it because we might be in danger and we need to make a quick decision. So we're really good at understanding problems. So if we're really good at understanding what a problem is, okay, the flip side of a problem is a potential business opportunity. So if we focus on what problems are, okay, we will automatically increase tremendously the amount of potential business opportunities we find. And then if it's really difficult, then we can ramp it up in terms of pain. What pain is this particular group having? What pain is this particular group having? And that's as simple as that. Need, problem, pain. So if you start thinking in terms of problems rather than needs, you will increase the number of opportunities that you see, the number of idea kernels that you create. Okay? And then if you prepare yourself to listen, the market will actually tell you. The market will actually tell you. If you prepared yourself properly, the market will tell you. And what did we talk about being prepared? In the earlier lecture, we talked about what? That you need to fill your head with market information, customer information, okay, by reading, by talking to potential customers, going to fairs, reading trade magazines, blah, blah, blah. If we do that, and we start understanding the customer, and we start thinking about what problems they have, the market will tell you. Okay, the market will tell you. Okay, the deeper your true market knowledge, the better off you'll be. The better off you'll be. So I like to view myself as a doctor of opportunity. I actually am a doctor of opportunity, but that's beside the point. But think of yourself as a doctor of opportunity. What is the pain out there? What's the problem? And what we come up with is the solution. We come up with the solution. Okay. What's the solution for the problem? That's the product or service. Try to keep the solutions that you come up with, your products and services, simple. This is not to say that every problem can be solved simply, but solutions tend to be less expensive and more easily understood than complex solutions. And you do have to be able to build the solution. You have to be able to sell it as well. Okay, so keep that in mind. So with that being said, that is the end of Lecture 3 as an intro to ideation.